Hi, I'm Nick and this is the TbT channel. In today's video we have got back the Diana 54 Air King. Is this the Air King or is this the TH? What's that? Something Hunter? Anyway, it's a Diana side lever Magnum powered rifle in a semi-recoilless stock. You may remember a little while back I had this in. This was from my gun shop, the gun shop I go to and do repairs for. It wasn't working. There was a problem with the trigger. We had the gun in, we stripped it, we found the problem, we fixed the problem, we put it back together. But the gun has a pentagon with the F in it there. It's a German spec gun and it came running at under 5.5 foot-pounds, which is 7.5 joules, the German limit. That's what that F means. But because I'm in France, we're in France, this gun is in France, the gun is physically capable of more than 20 joules, which is the French limit for air rifles without a license, because it doesn't matter what power it's running at. Here, if the gun is capable of more than that, it's a category C licensed air rifle. So even though this is only doing less than 5.5 foot-pounds, it needs a license. So understandably, when we spoke to the owner and said, look, we've got it working, would you like it to work properly? He said, yes, please. So I've got it back and we're going to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do, because it's going to be a complete beginning to end video. It may take a while. For that, I'll apologise in advance. But I have got in front of me here my chrono. So before we start, I am going to load and fire this rifle over a chronograph. I'm using Crossman Accupels because that's all I've actually got to hand at the moment. They're 7.9 grains weighed on my little scales there. So this is across the chronograph into my backstop. So Mr. and Mrs. YouTube people on there, this is a safe shot. That is 7, sorry, 7. It isn't 7 at all. Let me just pop that back on there. Grab it for you. It is 3.79 foot-pounds. Okay, 3.79, effectively 3.8, 465 feet per second. Now I'm going to leave that there, and it is now time to take the gun apart. We have our beginning power. So let's remember how we did this. I need a cross-headed screwdriver. Failed at the first hurdle. I'll be back. As if by magic. Right, so remembering what it is I need to take apart here. I'm going to take apart everything, all the screws out the bottom here. 2 on the trigger guard. There we are, that's the trigger guard 3. Then we've got 2 that hold the action to the sled system. When you actually get these off, you'll see inside of here, these fix onto points, moving points inside of the onto the gun. So that's little runners that allow it to move backwards and forwards there. And we've got these rubber and metal washers front and back to absorb the vibration from those. Check there's no parts left on the inside. Whilst dropping the screws out, don't drop those. Pop him back into there, that back into that, put that down there safely. Next we are going to we're going to take the cocking arm off. I knew that was going to happen, that wasn't a problem. First thing is remove the little C-clip. I'm going to put my glasses on for this part. The little C-clip from there, he comes off to there, and the little pin wiggles out. Okay, so he is now free. Next Here's the one at the rear here. Pop him out there. And then that pin will come free. But if you remember from the last video, when we take this arm out, you need to be aware because there are 2 washers or shims either side of the little cocking arm barrel bit that goes through the centre of it, whatever that's called. So next we are going to need to remove the trigger. So I will put that part to that side to give me more space here, pop him there, and then we're just going to push these through. There's not a lot of force on these, so I'm just using my favourite screwdriver for this job today. When we get to that point, the spring tension is now on my screwdriver. So I simply put that there, take that, and the spring tension has gone. It is up, it is no more. There is our spring, and there is our guide. Next we need to remove the compression tube and the piston, for which we are desirous of an Allen key to remove the little grub screw that runs through this arm here. There's a grub screw running that way that holds this in place, and we need to remove that so that we can get to so we can remove, I should say, so that we can remove the compression tube, and I shall show you why we need to remove the compression tube once it is out. So this is quite an awkward job. I say quite, I mean very. Oh, especially with a bad shoulder. Come on, come on. Right, we're going to fast forward this bit. Right, that part out, that part comes out, and now everything falls out the back of the gun. And we have our piston there, and we have our compression tube here. Now, the first thing we need to do is push the breech seal out of the compression tube from the back with a thin rod. We've got a restrictor washer inside of there, so all we're actually going to do is push it through that way, remove the breech seal, remove the washer, and then put the breech seal back in without the washer. I'm just going to go and measure this and find a rod of the correct size. I will tell you what size that is as soon as I get back, and we'll remove that washer. Well, it's out. It's actually 3mm, and I just use a 3mm knitting needle, and I was going to get it all set up so that I could show you, and all I was going to do, she got quite a void there, is to tap it like that and gently tap it. It just came out, so it's out. There's your breech washer. Okay, now the breech washer has a diameter, an inner diameter of 3.9mm. Okay, 3.9mm, and this is the restrictor washer. Do you see that? The restrictor washer. 3.9 is what it should be. The amount of room you've got to come out of here, crikey O'Reilly. I'm just going to check that again, make sure I've got that right. 1.1mm. Okay, now if you know anything about transfer port, static compression ratios, all of that malarkey, you'll know that trying to squeeze out a bloody great chunk of air like this through a 1.1mm hole is just going to lead to frustration, piston bounce and nasty behaviour. So that is what we had. That is how this has been tamed down to such. I mean, that's the German one, 1.1mm. I would assume it's going to be a bit larger for the 12 foot-pound version. But it's the same principle. It's rubbish. So we're going to put that to one side, and now simply refit the the breech seal into there, which I'm going to press back in. Actually, I'm going to press that back in using the chuck in the lathe just to keep it square. You could just get the correct size punch and tap it down into place. I do have a correct size punch somewhere, but I would rather, because it's not my gun, I'm just going to do this in the lathe. I'll be back in a moment. And there you go. It was quicker to do it than to say it. Very, very easy. So now I can see you through that hole. We've got a 4mm or 3.9mm hole through the centre for the air to escape. This will mean that we can get more power. Now, what I am going to do is I am going to fit one of our springs, the maxi kit, the Magnum kit, in fact, for the Dianas, into this gun. Now, the Magnum kit is one of our Magnum reduced springs, the shorter one with a fitted top hat, rear guide, and the flange on the back, you will see, is deeper than usual. That's because we're running with less preload with this setup, because it doesn't need a lot of preload, because it's got power to spare. So we're after a combination of power, accuracy and ease of use, ease of cocking. So there's extra preload there, because if there's not enough preload, it can shatter the rear flange. And we also need 2 slip washers, because on the trigger unit here we have a recess. We need to put one of the slip washers into that recess to support the back of the flange, again to avoid any breakage of it. So I am just going to grab myself a couple of those slip washers and I'll be straight back. This is the grease and washer bag from one of our Diana 52 Magnum kits. And if I take the bits out of here, you'll see it actually comes with 2 slip washers and 2 power washers. I wouldn't for the moment fit the power washers, because in many versions, this again is a gun that's been made for many years. It's a 48, 52, 54, 56, T01, T05, T06 triggers. There is a chance with any combination of those that adding the preload as well will stop it cocking. So don't bother about adding preload for the moment. Trust me, it's got plenty of power. So what we want to do first is, actually, we want to put the piston into the compression tube first, which means we need our bum slide. Bum slide is our high molybdenum paste that we supply with many kits, or we sell if you buy a kit that doesn't have it with it. It's a very high molybdenum content paste. You need very small amounts of it, just around the front of the piston there, and then rub upwards all around the piston seal, just to make sure you get plenty of lubrication there, but none on the front face of the seal, because that's where it will diesel. So all around the front there, and then at the back here where it's flared, just that section. Okay, and that's it, and down from that section just onto that part there. So I've actually degreased that, but I did that off camera, which was a bit foolish. But we've degreased the inside of the compression tube, because every time the piston comes out of the compression tube, it needs to be degreased. Otherwise, the tiny amounts that are in there all get pushed down the bottom and it will diesel. So that is in there, and that's nice. And now we're going to put this back inside of the gun, and all we need to do here is work out which way round this goes, and we have the grub screw towards the opening on the side there. So this is the bottom of the compression tube. So we're going to put some bum slide along the bottom edge of the compression tube there, because that's where it spends most of its time, resting on the bottom. And then we're going to put a ring of bum slide around the rear. You don't have to worry about how much you put here. You can't put too much, because this is outside the scope of compression. It's on the outside of the tube, so it won't cause dieseling. And then we put all of that inside of the gun in the correct place. Fighting the anti-bear trap all the way. There we are. and then we get our cocking arm, and that goes into there. Then we get our little securing screw, the grub screw with the pin on it, which is what locks that into place. And we will get our reading glasses, and we will get our Allen key, and we'll just quickly do that up again. Just a few turns of this is all it needs. There we are, a couple more. That's almost it, one more, and it is snug. There we are, that is good. So now the compression tube and the piston are in there, lubricated. You'll see where I put the bum side there means you don't get any grease in this port here where you see the compression tube. It's underneath it and it's in a ring around the rear. We've removed our restrictor washer there, that restrictor washer, so we now have a transfer port of 3.9mm instead of 1.1mm, and we are now going to replace the factory spring, which is this one. Now you will notice that our spring is considerably shorter than the factory spring. That is because we actually want it to shoot nicely. It's a recoilless system, I know, but we want it to shoot as nicely as possible. So easy cocking to me, to you, is part of shooting nicely, and that's kind of what I'm after with this. Doesn't mean it's not going to be powerful, not by a long shot, chalk. Right, cut the corner off the grease. We want a small amount of the grease in the palm of one hand, like that. Then we get our spring and we simply pull it through the palm of the other hand to give it a liberal coating all the way up. Okay, so it's not caked in it, it's just got a quantity of grease on the outside of the spring. We stick our slip washer to the front of the top hat like that, and then introduce the whole lot, voila, into the gun. Good. Well, that's safe. Let me just clean the bulk of the gunk off my hand so I can continue rebuilding without covering everything in a coating of grease. Now you can use bum side for the spring, and I know a lot of people do. I do, if I'm honest, but that's because I've got a lot of it. But you don't need to. Standard molly on the spring. Bum side is fantastic in all metal to metal applications, but because it's anti-fling, it works well on the spring. But you can just use standard grease, it's okay. Now then, we want to put our trigger unit back into the gun. So we've got our slip washer, our second slip washer, and that fits inside of there. See that? That's the right size, the right depth, and everything to fit in there, and it falls straight back out again. Let me just angle the gun slightly. I've got a little bit of movement on that as well. Got a little, I don't know if you can hear that, there's the microphone. A little bit of movement on that moderator, but I'll look at that afterwards. That's not a job for the video, that's just 2 grub screws there. I'll have a look at that afterwards. So that onto there, push all of that in, and you will see that we have literally, what's that, 3 maybe 4mm of preload, and that is all, because that's all we need with this gun. And we are going to get our 2 pins, which are here. Now they're the same, they're both the same as each other, so you don't have to, not like with the Virac where one of them's for the front, one of them's for the back. This does both. So just pull that back, pop that into there. Now with these trigger units, this is the T06, you don't need dummy pins in it. Some of them do. Some of them you need to make a little pin that replaces the pin when you push it out, otherwise the trigger parts can move, and then it's not difficult, but it can be a trick to get them back in. So just seat those back in. there. Bum, bum, bum. Perfect. Now we want to put our cocking arm back onto here. And the first thing we're going to do is the 2 shims or washers that go either side of there. I'm just going to get, because I clean my hand, I'm just going to get some bum slide, small amount on tip of a finger, just get some bum slidey fingers. Just to put a small amount of that, because this is metal to metal. Anywhere you got metal to metal, if you put bum slide or another type, doesn't really matter, of high molybdenum content paste or grease, that will just stop wear. It will prevent wear in use. So that goes onto there. Are we lined up? We nearly are. There we are. That is through. Turn him over. As a larger circlip, I dub these circlip. There we are. The larger circlip goes on this one at the back, like that. And then this one. Now, I had dramas last time. I didn't tension this correctly and I had a floppy arm. So let me just pop this through loosely first and see if it's in the right place. No, that is too floppy. So take that out and tighten it half a turn. Was that tightening it or was that loosening it? Let's see. Pop that through again. There we are, that's the correct fit. That one in place. Onto there. There we go. Our cocking arm is in place, our trigger's in place, everything is inside of it. All we need to do now is fit the stock back on, which I will do. We put one of these at the back, one of these at the front. Pick up our stock. So it's metal washer, rubber at the back, metal washer, rubber, metal washer at the front. Make sure the arm is open. And make sure both of the sled positions are in the same place, in this case toward the rear. Line up, bingo, bango, bongo. So we get one of these dropped into the front there, into the back, sorry, there. Now that would have been easier if I hadn't have dropped the screws out on the floor, but you can't have everything. That's the thing. And then the one at the front goes into there. Are you following me so far? So we've changed the spring for a better one. The Diana springs are okay, but you know, they're not as good as ours. We've got a slightly thicker wire. We've taken out the transfer port restrictor washer. And now, over the same chrono, which is still saying 3.79 foot-pounds, 465.2 feet a second, we'll see what we get with the spring in and the washer removed. 3, 2, 1. Well, there we go. We have achieved 1047 feet a second, 19.25 foot-pounds. So it has increased. There's no getting around the fact that 1047 feet a second is a little bit more than 462, 19.25 foot-pounds. Now, that's with very little preload, very easy to rebuild, and reasonable cocking effort, you know. But I can tell you, I'm just going to pop another one over there, because what you might be able to tell, especially if you're able to go backwards and forwards from the earlier shot to this one, it's got so much less recoil now. And you're going to think, how can 19 foot-pounds have much less recoil than 3.8? That's because the gun is doing what the gun wants to do. This is the whole point with short stroking. When we short stroke for the 12 foot-pound limit with our TXs and Virox in the UK with the Maxi Pro kits, we're stopping the gun from running at a power it's unhappy at, and we're making it happy at the power we want. We're changing the amount of air to where we want it to shoot, fooling the gun into thinking it's ripping off and doing what it wants to do. Everyone's happy. So let's watch the gun this time, okay? You know, that's good. Pretty bloody good. And this time we've got 1089.9 feet a second and 20.83 foot-pounds. So it's maybe a little high. I think I might be shooting this in the garden for a little bit and maybe tweaking it down just a small amount to try and get it under 1,000 feet a second. 950 is ideal. But anyway, like, subscribe, hit notifications. This was quite a long video. Thank you for bearing with me, but I wanted to get this done in one video rather than a series this time, because this is a gun I've already done a few videos on. This is a great gun at the power it's intended for. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.